You're watching Capitol Conversations with Congressman Mike McIntyre, an opportunity for the people of southeastern North Carolina to get an inside look at the issues facing the nation and the U.S. Congress. I invite you to see how your community is affected. Now, from Washington, D.C., here's Congressman Mike McIntyre.
Hi, I'm Mike McIntyre, and I'm thrilled that you've joined us today for our Capitol Conversations. This is a first in a series of programs that we hope to bring you more information that are educational in nature, that will help enrich your knowledge of what goes on in Washington. You know, there's a lot of talk these days about why are they doing that, or why don't they do this, or what can they do to help my business, to help our schools, to help our transportation, to help grandma and granddad, or to help and honor our veterans, or to help the farmers who are in a difficult time now with drought. So all these kinds of issues we want to talk about. We want to hear from you. I invite you to listen in today as we talk about some of the issues that are affecting you right back at home in southeastern North Carolina, the place we love and the place that is so dear to all of us and that we want to have a future, not just for ourselves, but for our families and for generations to come. And today, as our very first guest, I'm thrilled to have a good friend of mine, Dan Boren from Oklahoma, who was elected to the state legislature at the young age of 29 and has had a lifetime of service already in his short lifetime because of what he was able to do for his constituents back home in Oklahoma, and now has come to Washington and has been serving here the last several years. And I'm thrilled that Dan is with us today so we can talk about some of the issues of concern that we share, and maybe that'll give you a perspective to look at, not only as we look at it through the lens of southeastern North Carolina, which is always my first priority, but then how that translates into national policy from the national dialogue going on and ultimately the national legislation that will affect all of our lives. So Dan, I'm thrilled to have you with us today.
Great to be on, Mike.
And thank you for taking your time. I know with you being elected originally to the state legislature at a young age, tell us what motivated you to get involved in public service. You know, so many people today are saying that people in public service are there just for themselves or for their own career's sake. But I know you were inspired at a young age to get involved, and I hope that'll be an inspiration. A lot of folks know back home I spend a lot of time with young people and in the schools. In fact,
Sure.
I was just with some young people today before I came to this interview.
Great.
But tell us what inspired you to be involved in public service.
Well, it was kind of by happenstance in a way, and not in another way. I come from a long line of public servants. I'm actually a third-generation elected official from Oklahoma. My grandfather served in the United States Congress from 1937 until 1947, and he was a school teacher and had a very successful career. And then my father served in the state legislature, served as our governor and United States Senator. And so when I was growing up, actually, the last thing that I thought I was ever going to do was to be involved in politics. I thought, well, maybe I'll start a business or maybe I'll do this or that. I thought, I just don't know if I'm going to do that. But as I got older and I ran into so many people that, you know, my father had helped, whether it was appointing someone to a military academy, whether it was, you know, helping someone find a job, I thought that, you know, not only there's an opportunity but a responsibility to give back. We have my state of Oklahoma, about 3.5 million people. My district is very rural, and I've always my goal and what I've tried to do in Congress has really been about creating jobs, economic development, and especially creating those opportunities in rural areas.
Right.
And so anyway, I ran against an incumbent for the state legislature when I first ran, and no one gave me that much of a chance, and I was able to win. And then in 2004 I was elected to Congress, and now this is my fourth term. Right. And so it's been a blessing and an honor to serve the people. And I know you've done the same. I know you've got a great family and a great tradition as well, and you've served a little bit longer than I have, but you know, I think you've done an admirable job.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you for. We're blessed that you continued that tradition in your family, and that even though you were maybe trying to think of something else to do, that you were blessed, and the good Lord gave you the opportunity, the ability, and the wisdom to do the things you've done in Congress. I know we serve together on what's called the Blue Dog Coalition, and for us that's not just a political vehicle or political agenda, but rather it's a group of members of Congress whose central guiding principle is balance the budget, pay down the national debt. Well, I know when I first came to Congress after 1996 and started serving in 97, that was the central mantra of the group back then. And we did get to the point that we balanced the budget in the late 90s and that we were having a surplus. And oh that those days were here again. We all long for the good old days in one way or another in life, from depending on the circumstances. But now we hearken back to that we have done it. And I know we've done it. We did it when I first came to Congress. I've always supported a balanced budget amendment so that it's not a guessing game. Will Congress this year, by statute, pass or not pass a balanced budget? But rather, let's make sure Congress does if we had a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. So I know that's something you and I have particularly shared. Tell us what, in your leadership position of the Blue Dog Coalition, what you see the Blue Dogs are doing, and in a broader sense, because I know we have viewers that this is not a political show for a certain agenda, but rather trying to do the agenda of the people. We have friends watching from all political backgrounds. Tell how that translates, you think, into good legislation and what needs to be done, because everybody right now is upset. They're upset about the debt ceiling. They're upset about why don't we balance the budget, and how do we get rid of this terrible, terrible situation we're in with the deficit we have in our country.
Well, you know, I served in the legislature, and Oklahoma has a balanced budget. By law, we had to balance our budget. When I came into office as a young legislator, we had a $700 million shortfall in Oklahoma. And we had to go in and cut some programs that were popular, but it was important that we not live outside our means. And if you look at other states right now, California and other places where they're facing some really big deficits, it's a real issue. And we've got to take that to Washington, D.C. We have right now at the federal level a $1.65 trillion deficit. Now that's every year, adding on to a $14 trillion debt. And by having a balanced budget amendment, and there's a lot of different versions, you know, of that balanced budget amendment. I think we've signed on to several together. But you know, the main thing is having that mechanism, because you know, politically, you know, everyone wants, hey, give money to my program, don't cut my program, but you can cut someone over here. And you know, with that kind of mentality, it's hard to cut. And you know, but we've got to, for the sake of our country. It's a national security issue. I think the Blue Dogs are a group that are more important than ever, because what we were able to do is, you know, we are registered Democrats. We're Democrats here, but we're able to bridge the Congress. We're able to work with Republicans. I think it's important right now, particularly the American public is looking at Congress and saying, I don't care if you're a Democrat, I don't care if you're a Republican, we just want these problems solved.
Right.
And so I think Blue Dogs are unique in the fact that they can work with both parties, and we can do things, balance a budget while still maintaining our priorities of taking care of programs like Social Security and Medicare. I know in my district we have a lot of seniors, and many have asked me, are concerned about the long-term aspects of those programs, and we need to give them a sense of, hey, it's going to be okay. We're going to shore up these programs. We're going to make sure they're there not only for this generation, but for generations that come after. And so I think we're going to do that. I feel this is right now, in the next few months, we have an opportunity to do something that people haven't done in generations. And I really appreciate, you know, you've been very independent. You know, you don't always just toe the line one way or the other. I think you kind of, you know, vote North Carolina is is the way I see it.
Right.
And there aren't many people in Congress that do that anymore. And I think that's people outside of Washington D.C. are thirsting for that. And I hope that you know, we can continue to do that as Blue Dogs.
Right. Well, thank you. And that's a good way to describe it. And I observed the same with you in your desire to promote principles and policies that are not based on just politics, but rather based on what's for the best of the country, and obviously always as a priority what's best for your own district and state. You mentioned Social Security. I know we have a very high population of senior citizens in southeastern North Carolina. Our beautiful beaches that people have been moving to, many people have discovered, especially in northeastern United States now, that North Carolina and South Carolina beaches are wonderful places to retire to. And We have also a lot of families like mine who've been there for generations in the smaller communities or on the farms or in the rural areas. And then, of course, we have a very high population of veterans because our district sits between Camp Lejeune on one end and Fort Bragg on the other. So a very high number of veterans that we're honored to have that live and enjoy being in our area. Tell us the critical question that we are hearing incessantly about in our office and how you view it with regard to Social Security, making sure that that's protected for our seniors. And at the same time, how does that question play into this larger question now in the big debate about our budget and about the national debt situation?
Well, I think with Social Security, I mean, you go back just a few years ago, there was a move to privatize the program, and I've never been a supporter of that. I think there are things that we can do in the very long term. I mean, that we can shore up this program. And the folks that are retiring now and the folks that are going to start to do that over the next 10 or 15 or 20 years, I don't think they should worry. I know that, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty out there, but I would say those folks are, you know, those are promises that we've made, and we're going to keep those promises. It's for the very young people that are, you know, just now starting to pay into the program that we may say to them, you know, the benefits may look a little different, but you're going to have a benefit. We need to make sure that the program is there because it's actually, Social Security is probably the easiest fix. Medicare is a little bit more difficult because of the exploding costs of health care. But I think we can do it and do it without, you know, just terrible pain if we do it now. If we wait 20 or 30 years from now, you're going to see some drastic things happen. And I think you and I don't want to do that. We want to make sure it's on a long-term stability, a glide path. And so anyway, I think that will happen. Now, you brought up defense. In our district, we have the McAllister Army Ammunition Depot, and I know we served on the Armed Services Committee together. And defense is an area that you know, we need to make sure we continue to fund our military, but we've got to be smart about it. It's got to be efficient, and we can do that without jeopardizing national security. I've got a lot of veterans in my district, and I'm glad to see over the last 2 or 3 years we've upped the funding, had the highest level of funding in the VA budget in its history.
Right.
And so we're really taking care of our veterans. I know you've really worked on a lot of veterans issues, and you know, are on that top level of the Armed Services Committee. So, but you know, it's an issue. It's a big issue, and we're fighting a new war. We're fighting a different type of war. I also serve on the Intelligence Committee, and we've got this war without borders, you know, the Al Qaeda and all these other things, and how do we fund that? And that's all part of the discussion.
Right. Well, that's true, and I'm glad you mentioned that about the veterans, because back home in North Carolina, and I hope our viewers that can will be with us, we're getting ready to open a veterans clinic in Brunswick County, where we have a high number of senior citizens who've retired,
great.
many of whom are veterans. And there was a lot of folks who thought that would never happen. We had to deal with the Veterans Administration for years, and finally got an undersecretary to physically come down a year ago, April, and made the announcement this April that we will have the outpatient clinic in Brunswick County. So we are excited about that opening on August the 8th. So we hope our viewers will join us for that special opening of the Brunswick Outpatient Veterans Clinic. And then also we're going to have a groundbreaking for a new super regional clinic that will serve a 6 to 7 county area in southeastern North Carolina in Wilmington. Coming up, we hope the groundbreaking will be by this fall, hopefully in September. There are some legal hurdles and contractual clauses that have to still be worked out. Always the legal paperwork has to be done, but it's still coming, and we're excited about that. And then on the other end of the district at Fort Bragg, of course, we continue to have improvements at the VA Medical Center there.